The year is almost over when it comes to big releases, pretty much. Sure, we still got some heavy hitters on the way, but for the most part, 2025 has come and gone with what the industry had to offer, and mostly I would say that 2025 was pretty good for games. There was a lot of interesting things that have come, and I think in terms of Western games, it was definitely a stronger year this time than, say, the last few years. That being said, something that hasn't been fixed is the ongoing discourse between the games industry and the people who buy and support the games. And so I want to talk about queer games apparently being under attack, and how many games that came out this year included female main characters, and how one website tries to paint everyone they disagree with as evil bigots. I'm talking about thegamer.com here. I know, big surprise, they're still crying about not being able to read their audience's wants or needs, I guess, but they had articles like this one titled, "Queer Games Are Under Attack," and the entire article then tries to paint the picture that it's somehow a big problem that many of the bastions of what they deem LGBT havens in gaming are now being absorbed by groups that disagree with them entirely. As seen here, they first speak on the EA buyout, how the Saudis and Trump's nephew will now own Electronic Arts, which worries thegamer.com greatly because EA was home to things like BioWare and The Sims, just to name a few. They even have a part in the article, as also seen here, where they say that EA's acquisition will result in censorship of what game developers can or cannot say in the future. And that's pretty rich. You mean how for about the past 5 years or so, the games industry has been silencing and witch hunting anyone that they found who wasn't politically aligned with them and then forced them out of the industry too? Or is that not censorship then? Remember when Kotaku or The Verge, like this article shows here, where the industry watchdogs went on a manhunt for a man named Troy Levitt, a developer of Hogwarts Legacy, because he wasn't left-leaning, and no, I'm not kidding? And they pushed this so hard against Warner Bros. That Troy just retired and left the games industry completely due to how bloodthirsty these journalists were about getting rid of this guy simply because of how he thought in his head compared to theirs. That sort of censorship? Yeah, because I remember that one. You can't really claim the moral high ground against censorship when the only stories the West seems to be wanting to tell most of the time these days are things that just align with their values and their values alone. So the whole EA thing likely did piss off places like The Gamer and more, and yeah, rightfully so, because they know that they're losing ground. Gamergate 2 already devastated the entire game industry and lost them hundreds of millions of dollars in supporters. And now EA is bought up by people who do not agree with LGBT values, and that is putting that lightly. But like I said in videos that I also did on EA's buyout, these people just did this to themselves. They allowed their companies to get weak, which allowed for hostile takeover. So I can't feel sorry when they did things like this of their own accord. The Gamer also recites a Eurogamer article which conveys the values of the Saudis who bought EA, which reads as follows. "We have found that the Public Investment Fund has contributed to and is responsible for human rights abuses. This is $1 trillion in Saudi state wealth that should be invested to realize the economic and social rights of Saudi citizens. We found it's been invested in vanity mega projects inside and outside of the country," the Gamer continues. "Saudi Arabia has long criminalized same-sex identities and sexual activity, and President Donald Trump has attacked LGBTQ+ rights and legal protections. While EA CEO Andrew Wilson has insisted its values and commitment to players and fans around the world remain unchanged, fans of EA studios and titles like The Sims 4, Mass Effect, and Dragon Age, all of which have contained LGBTQ+ characters and themes in the past, are worried that the new owners will censor games moving forward." Wow, so the consequences of your own actions by making games people didn't want led to other people buying you out. Wow, imagine that. I will come back to this article, but it pairs nicely with another one that I really wanted to talk about as well. It's also from The Gamer, and it's titled 2025's Biggest Sequels All-Star Women, and Only One Received Backlash. Yeah, I know, hilariously they put Silksong of all things in this too, even though Hornet is a literal bug, but this shows you just how far they're reaching. And if you enjoy the content, by the way, consider all the YouTube stuff from liking the video, subscribing, and commenting. Thank you, but The Gamer also makes the point that all three of the games they start with, Ghost of Yotei, Hades 2, and Silksong, were all franchises that actually started with male protagonists before shifting to the new female ones, yet only one of those three gained any backlash in Yotei. Gee, I wonder why. But as they state here, Ghost of Yotei got the worst of it, but they also refuse to admit why it got the backlash compared to Hades 2 or Silksong. The Gamer did continue with this. "A subset of gamers will always be mad seeing women-led video games, especially if they aren't conventionally attractive. Yotei was just the latest example, with similar outrage hitting The Witcher 4, Star Wars Outlaws, and Intergalactic: The Heretic Prophet, to name a few. For these players, men are seen as a default protagonist for games, and any deviation from this norm must be well justified or risk being seen as political. Well, here's the thing, right? First of all, it's funny that the gamer admits that Yotei's main character isn't attractive, which is kind of funny to admit themselves, but anyways. However, them saying that people view female protagonists as inherently political tells me that these journalists keep refusing to actually admit the reasons as to why this is the case. They simply condense it down to it's because they're women and they leave it at that, except no, that's not the case. There have been plenty of female protagonists in games that people have loved already. Obvious examples, Samus, Lara Croft, hell, even Hornet and Silksong, or like the gamer brought up, Hades 2 and more. We even had other games come out this year like Wuchang Fallen Feathers, where you play a warrior woman who fights all manner of beasts, men and women alike too. Not to mention you have future games that are coming out like Tides of Annihilation, which also stars a conventionally attractive female main character, yet not a single peep of anyone claiming that it's political. The problem here maybe isn't the female protagonists, but how the people writing and making these games like Yotei as the prime example, or even Naoe in Assassin's Creed Shadows, is that these are not just female protagonists. They instead always implement inherently political talking points into these characters as well. No one would care if Ghost's sequel had a female if she wasn't firstly voiced and had the face of a literal activist. But beyond that, they wouldn't have a problem if the game did not also push, inherently anti-male rhetoric across the game too. I already spoke on how Yotei has the main character raising a daughter with another woman already in other videos. Again, we see the things that they're trying to push. We're not stupid. But you can't sit there and claim that players are against female protagonists when that is so clearly not the case. Go look at Stellar Blade, another game starring a female character. It sold millions of copies. People loved that game. It was one of my favorite games of the year when it came out. The demo alone, when that first dropped, it blew me away. I had so much fun with Stellar Blade, honestly, that I was just anticipating playing it when it first came out. And when it did, I couldn't put the game down until I beat it either. And then once I beat Stellar Blade, I immediately jumped back into New Game Plus to play the whole game over again. I don't know about you guys, but that's a sign of a good game to me. And it starred a woman. It also had other women in it too, but why wasn't Stellar Blade met with the same backlash as Yotei or Shadows? Was it because Eve was attractive in a conventional sense? It's part of it, but the real reason I think is because Shift Up, which made Stellar Blade, they did not use Eve to force stuff down other people's throats like these other games do, and they know that. And it also helped a lot that Eve's model and the voice actor did not, advocate for domestic terrorism like Antifa, like Yotei's actor and face model already did. You see that these people are missing the point, and they know that they're missing the point, but frankly, they refuse to admit it and hope they can do surface level with their analysis and hope that that's enough. But it really isn't, okay? Wuchang came out this year too. I thought that was a great game. It was also another game where as soon as I beat it the first time, I also immediately jumped back into it, played the whole thing over again until I platinumed it the same way I did with Stellar Blade. Wuchang is also the name of the main character in the game in case you don't know, and she's a badass female warrior who cuts down demons and monsters as well as human enemies too. But she never once comes off as trying to force an agenda down your throat or trying to push the men are bad narrative always. Because instead, actually, plenty of men are helping her along the way in her story as she travels the land and faces the horrors that await her. Gee, gender equality, imagine that. It's almost as if you can have these game star women and have them also be great and profitable and have all the things that you claim that you want. You just need to take the politics and your ego out of the way and your own in order for that to happen. Because neither Eve or Wuchang ever do nonsense like raising a daughter or have their voice actors advocating for political violence on those they disagree with. And by raising a daughter, I mean raising a daughter with the woman that groomed you, that's from your dead brother, and it's clearly we know what they're pushing, and let's just keep going, whatever. Instead, they are professionals, which frankly the industry is kind of lacking that in spades when it comes to how these people articulate their beliefs in words, and especially when it comes to interacting with their fans. I do genuinely think that games were better when social media didn't exist, because much like movie stars, the public quickly began to learn how insane and frankly how actually stupid a lot of the people in games, notably the voice actors and writers specifically, were in real life. But claiming that 2025 was full of games that did well starring women while also equally forgetting the reason why is very telling of these games journalists, but frankly I'm not surprised. It does show that despite everything that they have learned nothing. And it's not that people are against female characters in games, it's that they're tired of crazy people who who think that their way of thinking or living is the only way to do it, otherwise you're a bigot. And to prove my point, you need only look at the same article I'm referencing in this very video. Here's why, according to The Gamer, how Silksong and Hades 2 avoided the right-wing backlash. Let's read it. Silksong may have been grandfathered in thanks to the game being announced all the way back in February 2019, when the conversation around this kind of thing was a little less stupid. But that doesn't account for Hades 2's lack of controversy, which was first revealed in December 2022. This could be a case where early access protects a game from too much attention, while still making it feel like part of the wider culture. Though Baldur's Gate 3 went on to be the most talked about game of 2023, it received little mainstream attention throughout its 3-year early access period. And Hades 2 enjoyed the same odd mixture of familiarity and anonymity. You're almost there. You're almost there to understanding, you absolute morons. But now let me just tell you why Silksong, Hades 2, and Baldur's Gate 3, what they all have in common that you seem to forget. Say it with me, everybody. They didn't attack their audience. Wow, amazing. Imagine that. Look, I know Hades 2 is a progressive game. It's pretty obvious when they made a game about Greek gods and made some of them black or whatever, which makes no sense at all technically. But at the very least, they aren't talking down to people about it or something. And then Silksong is about a bug in a cloak or dress. So I think even using that as a gotcha somehow is just stupid, honestly. But Baldur's Gate 3, that is a big one, and funny that they added that in there too of their own volition. Because what does BG3 have that Veilguard or Yotei and more didn't when it came to their LGBT stuff? Player choice. Right. Something that these other games don't really have, do they? And how did players react to BG3, which had LGBT content, compared to, say, Veilguard? Oh, they bought it in the millions, because that stuff wasn't being forced onto them. Wow, imagine that. Almost as if you could have your successful games with your LGBT content if you just didn't force it down everyone's throats because you can't help yourselves. In Veilguard's case, it's everywhere. In Yotei's case, there's no actual player choice to not raise a daughter with a woman who groomed you, but honestly, it's kind of weird that Yotei, as a game made by Sucker Punch of all people, which is actually known for player choice, and choosing your endings or your morality paths like Infamous and Tsushima, for example, decided to do away with that stuff this time, which also coincidentally aligns with the one game they made where they became far more political as well compared to previous games. Gee, it's almost like there's a pattern here or something. But this journalist who wrote this, whose name is Andrew King, continues to completely miss the point of his own article that he wrote himself, where he says this: such mitigating factors ultimately matter a whole lot less than the fact that these games are indies, a 2D Metrovania and a top-down roguelike. No matter how commercially successful, don't register to outrage farming influencers in the same way a big AAA game does. Nope, you idiot. It's because the examples you gave don't force those things down people's throats. That's why there's no outrage from them. I have no idea how you wrote this article without proofreading it to realize the holes in your own argument like this that you make against yourselves too, by the way. Yeah, Hades 2 and Silksong didn't get backlash because they're indies apparently, except the only backlash Silksong got, for example, was that it was so good and so well made and priced so cheaply that it was actual industry people that tried to pull it down instead. Like, remember when Eurogamer, alongside many other websites as seen here, complained that Silksong was too cheap and offered too much content and it would be a net negative for the industry? Or remember when Baldur's Gate 3 came out and also offered so much for its asking price, and instead of celebrating that, the industry, as also seen here, they got together and told players not to expect other games to be as content rich as Baldur's Gate 3, and that it was an anomaly. I mean, you guys did the same thing with Elden Ring, by the way, too, as seen here from Screen Rant a few years ago. When Elden Ring first released, instead of praising it, Western game developers got really mad that it even existed at all, because it exposed how lazy and terrible the games that they were making around that time and then some were, also asking for the same price, by the way, as Elden Ring was. It's almost as if every time a game gets made, time and again, that gives players what they really want from the industry, you guys, collectively, just attack it. Yet when games give players what they don't want, which is more insufferable characters that push agendas and hate on their own consumer base, you laud praise it and you protect it. Which tells me that journalists like Andrew King here, with his female protagonist article, or Tessa Core, or however you say their name, with the Queer Games Are Under Attack article as well, they are all cut from the same cloth. They are being snake oil salesmen, and they-themers, I guess, who refuse to actually report on what players actually want from games these days, which is why they're turning to YouTube. And instead, these people are using their reach to try to pull the wool over players' eyes instead, in order to force the messaging that they agree with instead, while ignoring obvious examples. The same thing happened with Clair Obscur. Everyone loved that game, which has also plenty of female characters, but why didn't anyone hate Clair Obscur if it had so many women that were strong in it? Oh, right, because they were written well. They didn't talk down down to you and actually showed emotion. Wow, incredible. What a concept, right? It's kind of amazing how these people miss the point so often like this, even though they have so many examples in front of them. You even had posts like this on Twitter where this Nicola guy said this: "If you can't stand women in video games, this year sure sucked for you." And as you can see, it's filled with female characters from a ton of games that came out in 2025. Yet this Nicola guy got clowned on in the comments like crazy because besides Atsu from Yote or Noway and Shadows, the rest of the games shown here either did fine or great, so it kind of proves nothing. And I already said that no one complained about Mael or Lune from Clair Obscur or Hornet from Silksong, the Death Stranding ladies who unironically promote having children, by the way, or the Split Fiction girls that no one hated them either. The Silent Hill F girl, that one is contentious, but mostly because people were kind of against the Souls-like combat, which made many people believe it simply wasn't a Silent Hill game at all. First, they just slapped some fog on that sucker, changed the game title, and they sent it out to the presses. But I guess the only female characters, which coincides with the Gamer article from before, like always, is Noway and Atsu, which are pretty much the same character, let's be honest. And with the Silent Hill girl maybe in third place, I guess, because that game is rightfully full of anti-marriage propaganda as well. But again, these people don't understand the things that they are talking about. They just say things and hope no one notices, I guess. Although you did have funny clapbacks like this user, who basically posted an AI version of what that Nicola guy looked like, and it's crazy accurate too, by the way. But it's funny how this entire video pretty much could be summed up by this one tweet that continues to be evergreen for the rest of time, which reads: "It's amazing how much leftist discourse is just them pretending not to understand things, thus making discourse impossible." And it's exactly that, almost, I'm not kidding, always at this point. We don't mind female protagonists, but it's very obvious from the Western developers that sometimes when they do their female characters, especially these days, they do it to push certain messaging first. Even Asmongold spoke on this. Here's what he said. Please watch.
There is no audience benefit to having an ugly female protagonist. I'm sorry. There's not. Nobody wants it. Nobody advocates for it. And if you think that's not true, go ahead and next time you see one of the girls that are talking about how good these characters look, give them a compliment and tell them that they look like this character. You'll see them switch up real quick. You'll get blocked.
Running error of grief.
Oh, yeah.
We know that the studio will be taking on the sci-fi realm next with Intergalactic: The Heretic Prophet.
You look like Lizzo. Yeah, the Lizzo thing. Yeah, exactly. Lizzo's so beautiful. Okay, well, you look like Lizzo. What the f*** is wrong with you? Exactly. No, I don't. Why? What's bad about that? I thought she was beautiful.
And he's right, by the way. When that Intergalactic game does inevitably come out, oh boy, let's hope it's not another Last of Us 2 slop messaging simulator again. But let's be real, Neil Druckmann's doing it, so that's probably what it's going to be. But circling back to that article about how queer games are under attack, I did find the ending of that article interesting, which reads as follows: "While not safe for work games and queer games are far from synonymous, censorship is a slippery slope, and plenty of games with adult content also feature queer themes. The slippery nature of company guidelines and rules mean that vague definitions like adult content can easily be reinterpreted in line with the pressure from external groups. Queer content can too easily begin to be considered adult and barred from storefronts. Many countries give movies containing homosexual relationships higher age ratings than those without. Even when there's no sexual content included, there's no mistaking it. It's a bad time to be making queer games, not safe for work or not. The world is changing before our eyes, and censorship, both subtle and overt, is taking hold." Interesting how censorship is only bad when it affects the things that you clearly advocate for. Where was this sort of attitude in the 2020 to 2022 era, when everyone on Twitter and then some, like YouTube, by the way, was also getting censored for questioning what was called the status quo? Where was the defense of Troy Levitt of Hogwarts Legacy during that witch hunt that you guys did on him? Where was the concern for destroying franchises to push slop as a problem, but only when the shoe is on the other foot, it's suddenly now an issue that we all have to be concerned with? No, sorry, but you don't get to pull that card now. You guys are hypocrites. You had your time to make the games that you wanted. They didn't work because you got way too overzealous. You could have been profitable like Baldur's Gate 3, but you went off the deep end, and now you're asking for people to save you when you would be laughing and waving if they were drowning instead. I have zero sympathy. The market spoke for themselves. The people, whether they were terminally online or regular people who don't even know about these things in the first place, they also didn't buy this stuff either. So if even the people who aren't in tune with this culture stuff are not also buying it, what does that tell you? That the world has clearly moved on and it's time that we all do too. Queer games are not under attack. They are just overdone and boring, and nobody is opening their wallets because they don't give you player choice. But crying about censorship while celebrating the same censorship when it affected people that you hated years ago tells us all what we really need to know about you. And female protagonists are fine as long as they're not written by modern day freakazoids, and you can have queer stuff in games if you just, stop bashing people over the head with it. I tried to tell you guys this to tone this down years ago, and you never listened to me. Oh well, I guess I'm not the target audience. But what do you guys think? Let me know in the comments. Thanks for watching, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.